hello everybody. This is Judge Eve, as I like to call myself, or just plain old Eve. I usually tell people I'm not Adam. I want to thank you, Marlene. I want to say hi to Tina and Rebecca, and hi to all of you, my sisters in Christ. And I was so led to give a couple of verses at the beginning, actually a few passages, if you bear with me. The Lord kept dealing with me how we have to love the Lord with all our hearts, with all our minds, with all our might, which is in Deuteronomy 6:5. But I also remembered how he said we have to love others as ourselves. So in Matthew 22, and I was only going to start with that, but listen to the couple of verses before verse 37. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, which really touched me, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy might, soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. And they said later that he asked them, Who do you think I am? And they said, Oh, the son of David. He said, Well, if that is the case, why does David call me Lord? And then they would never ask him any more questions. So I thought that was very cute. The other couple of verses I wanted to tell you is what the Lord spoke to me personally over the years, which I felt led to bring up to all of you. And it's Proverbs 3:5 and 3:6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. He spoke it to me that I was to lean on him. And in another one, I was asked to be on TBN at the time, and my then husband Cohen didn't let me do it, so I felt so bad, and I was awakened, and I felt like something was cut off of my left arm. And the word came to me in John 15:1-15, how he's the vineyard, we're the tendon, we're the branches, and Jesus is the vine. And when he prunes us, he does it so he can get more fruit. And I said, Lord, I think I'm fruity enough. I don't need to be pruned anymore. But the thing that he really showed me in my particular walk is that he's the vine, we're the branches. That's verse 5, John 15:5. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing, which is what my life is all about. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. And again he repeats in verse 12, This is my commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you. And there's no greater love than a brother put his life for another. So anyway, this is all to tell you. I was born in Jerusalem, a very Jewish Orthodox family. And as a child, my father kept telling me over and over again, my parents were from Poland. They were lucky to escape before the Holocaust took the rest of the family away. And he said to me never to forget that I was born in the city most important to the three main religions in the world, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. He repeated it over and over. Let me add that it was Palestine at the time. So in fact, I'm a Palestinian. My birth certificate is in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. So I'm both a Palestinian and an Israeli. But what I started to say was I was raised in a very Orthodox Jewish home, and there was no way ever that I would accept Jesus in my life. In fact, the only time I saw a cross was when I saw a Greek Orthodox priest in the street. I had also hurt my ankle, and my father would take me to this French hospital, a Catholic hospital, where a nun worked on my ankle. So those were my only experiences with Christians. You know, the cross was, oh, God, help. No way, no how. What I did say, I don't know if you heard it before, but as a child, my father repeated to me over and over again, don't ever forget that you were born in the city, most important to the three main religions in the world, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And sure is what we see today, isn't it? You know, so funny, you know, those of us who know Christ, and for me, he is Lord of my life. I have no life without him. We see, as we look back in our lives, that everything that has happened has been for a reason. And we get to where we get because he intended us to get there. I wanted to be a lawyer. I was 3 years old. And in Israel, there was no big deal. Women served in the military. In fact, I had military training at the age of 12 and after the 8th grade. they would take 2 girls and 2 boys from each class. We went to summer camp for 2 months because then we would help the military personnel the following year with our regular class, like having a gym class. And we had like 9 days of camp with the class as well. So one thing, I think we should all have gone. I don't want them for me because I was in war. We were in the siege in Jerusalem. When I saw a movie called Cast a Giant Shadow with Kirk Douglas, a true story of an American colonel who went to help during that period of time. I mean, I saw what we were in. We had no food. My mother, for a family of 4 under gunfire, would only get like a quarter of a round bread, like a pumpernickel type bread. If you saw an egg, it was a miracle. If you saw chicken, it was a miracle. Water had to be transported by trucks. And I'll never forget the day when there used to be a road to Jerusalem where the Arabs had like a camp, military camp on the top of the mountain called Latrun. And whenever Jewish cars would go by, they would shoot at them. So apparently Holocaust survivors helped build that, what was called Burma Road, to bypass that mountain. And we were the first civilian family that was able to move from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. Leave it to my dad. He was a character. He looked like Reagan, and if he went in the White House and say, "I'm Reagan," they would believe it. That was my father. That's the kind of training I had. And that was another reason why I could never accept Jesus in my life. I wouldn't want to hurt my parents, and especially my grandparents. My father's father was blonde, blue-eyed with a long beard, very, very Orthodox Jew. And I used to braid his beard when I was about 3. And only a few years ago, my mother told me it hurt him because the little hair under the beard. I said, "Mommy, why didn't he tell me?" So I would stop. She said, "He loved you too much. He didn't want to hurt your feelings." And to me, that is what God is like. They threaten to pull his beard out if he doesn't answer a prayer, but I don't mean it. But he does. Jesus tells us to come to him like little children, right? So anyway, we come to America, and I really believe when you marry, you stay at home, take care of the children, and finished college, ended up being a Spanish major with a math minor. I was going to teach and took a few education classes, and I said, that's not for me, and got married right after college and worked for a year, and then my then husband, Cohen, saw how excited I was. I had applied to law school, and the following year he started law school with me, and ended up that he quit, but I finished, and then had to hire a housekeeper. I had my first child. I have 4 children, by the way. And he said, why don't you just really take your time and study? Because I didn't pass the bar till the 3rd time. My child was the best child, slept all the time, but I kept looking at him. I really didn't want to study. So I said, I need to get out of the house to make it like a regular job to study. And we had a housekeeper end up staying instead of 3 months, 5 months, 5 years, and I ended up having to work. So ended up working as a lawyer. 4 things I was never going to do. Never be a judge, never accept Jesus in my life, never live in Las Vegas, and never have a computer. Never say never, because it ends up being the exact thing that we don't want to do. I lived in Las Vegas, I have a computer, I accepted Jesus, I did them all. So anyway, I was very active in everything, and I must say my former husband again encouraged me, he went to law school, he went back, so he encouraged me to phone one night at the Republican headquarters and then to teach law, and so I wouldn't be, lonely when he wasn't home. I don't know how to do things halfway, by the way. That's Israeli. When I used to I've ministered all over the country, I used to say, what do you mean turn the other cheek when somebody strikes you on one cheek? We turn and go after you and hit you in both cheeks. That would be the Israeli way, right? And I have to say, too, I used to be a go-getter, and in God I learned to be a come-receiver, which is a far better way to go. So anyway, eventually I was supposed to be a judge in California under Reagan, and the position was made available for Democratic Governor Brown at the time, so I didn't get it, but I was offered this position as administrative law judge with the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. And my husband said, why don't you take that? I was working in the Nixon campaign. By the way, I was at my thinnest weight at the time. For free, I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I set up speaking engagements for them. I lived in the Northridge, San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles area, and set up more speaking engagements in our little valley than all of LA County put together. So if you want a project done, don't have me do it halfway. I don't know how to do that. So anyway, I got to meet Nixon's brother and Lynn Nafziger, who later ran Reagan's campaign. I was very active in politics. Set up all kinds of speaking engagements for that, and I was active in the Lawyers Club of LA County. In the meantime, having my own law practice, which is another whole story, and 4 children. And the reason I accepted the judge's position was because I thought, hey, I was traveling an awful lot in my work. And I said, someday these kids will be teenagers, and they're going to say, hey, who are you? You know, I need to be home with them more. And the job at the time allowed me to leave like mid-afternoon, and I could be at home and do things with the children. So at that job, I used to say, have gavel, we'll travel. We covered different unemployment offices in the state of California. We covered about a third of California. And when I would go to the San Fernando office, these 2 gentlemen, one Jewish believer and another one who was a minister actually, kept talking to me about Jesus. I said, no way, no how, not me. I'm not just a Jew, but I'm a Jew born in Israel and in Jerusalem, which is the heart of the Jewish people, and I knew they would treat me as a traitor. So they kept giving me books, Michael, Why Do You Hate Me? The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey. And Michael was about a Jewish guy who was a rabbi. He was at Melodyland at the time. You know, that was a time in the 70s where spiritual things were so wonderful. The Christians were so committed and so wonderful. I see such an apostasy now. It just breaks my heart. But anyway, it's a whole story. I ended up accepting Jesus in my life because at the time Herb Ellingwood, who worked for Governor Reagan, also talked to me about it, and I ended up talking to a girl, and I'm cutting through it because I really want to concentrate on how to help all of you to publicize your books and become known. And because he said to me that I needed to pray to accept Jesus in my life, and he prayed with me, and I knew I couldn't do it. I mean, my grandparents would turn over in their grave, and I just couldn't do it. And I was on the board of directors of the Los Angeles Lawyers Club, and we had a meeting, and this guy who became a judge later on, Harry Crowder, was sitting across from me, and I was told to go follow him to our president's house because he had a prayer meeting. And he said to me after the meeting, he said, I had such love to share with you about Jesus. He said, I was wondering, why would a girl named Cohen, a Jewish girl, be interested in a prayer meeting? And I said to him, I've been looking for Jesus all day. It was really a miraculous experience, which is in more detail in my book. And he said, I had the 4 spiritual laws with me. He said, during the meeting, I had such love to talk to you about this. And, you know, of course, it says you accepted by faith, and he used to sit on top of your heart, in your heart. And I knew that was it. I could not stop crying. It just felt like somebody took a knife and slit the veil I had over my eyes, and for the first time I could see more clearly. And I know the next day my eyes were shining, and my face was shining. The sky looked bluer, and the sun looked brighter. And Harry told me to read the book of John. See, in Israel, you know the Old Testament, you study it over and over again, from about really the first grade stories, and then you start memorizing and the rabbinical interpretations. But I'd never been exposed to the New Testament. And that Saturday, by the way, the day I got saved was February 7, 1974. And that Saturday, I couldn't leave my bed. I couldn't believe what I was reading in the book of John about the love and the caring that we have, that Jesus has for us, and that we should have for one another. Everything I've ever believed in was right there. And what can I tell you? It's been an experience. It was wonderful. I was ministering all over the country. I was on TV and radio. In fact, Paul Crouch from TBN had offered me my own show. And then he was threatened by high-level Jewish people not to have me on anymore. They were watching Christian television, and I guess I was too effective. But still, I was traveling. It's amazing that my husband, Cohen, who could care less about God or Judaism, let me do that. But then, he divorced me because he said I either give up this Christ fantasy or it's our marriage. And I have to tell you, when he did that once before, I tried to take my life. I took over 40 aspirins, and it was like an angel was holding all of them in my stomach. It all came out, and I tell people I can't even die right, you know. But after that, he said, well, if you give up these friends and these people and these books, he would throw away my Bibles. See, I have an experience of living in America like people have lived in communist Russia and China. But what helped me, God spoke to me at about that time. And he said to me that the Jewish people will persecute me like their brothers persecuted Joseph in the Bible, but that then they will come to me for help. And I will go into a little bit what has happened to me afterwards.
Judge, let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question?
Is everybody there?
Yeah. Yes. Can I ask you a question? Judge. Oh, you know what?
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you well. Let me ask you a question real quick. Your maiden name was Cohen?
Yes. No, my maiden name was Sternlight.
Oh, okay. Your husband's name was Cohen.
Correct.
Okay.
Howard Cohen.
All right. When
Correct.
you said you were in the Nixon campaign, working in
Yes.
the... Okay. You want to tell us about what Nixon did for Israel? Maybe some people here don't know. Before.
Okay, what he did for Israel. Nixon was a friend to Israel. He gave him so many weapons and so much money, and that's how they really, it's difficult. I'm a very conservative Republican, not everybody is, okay? Reagan is my man. Nixon was my man at the time. And Nixon really did a lot of good for Israel. You know, he was raised, I think, a Quaker, if I remember correctly. You know, so I don't know that he lived it. I did not meet him. I met his brother. I did not meet Nixon himself. But the Jewish people really liked Nixon. You find that most Jewish people are very liberal Democrats. A lot of it came when they came from Europe. There was something called Tammany Hall in New York, like a union hall, and they couldn't get jobs, so this hall helped them financially and all that. With me, even in my job, I was persecuted. I'm very trained in being persecuted, by the way. I can be a lot of help with that. I was persecuted for being a conservative Republican because most of the judges in my office were Democrats and friends with the union. And in fact, they even controlled children's cases, which you're not allowed to do. So I said to them, you don't like what I do, appeal it. Our cases, we had to issue written decisions about each case. And just to mention, to the kind of cases I heard were unemployment insurance, disability insurance, all kinds of federal programs, disaster relief, and related programs.
Well, the reason I was asking you that was because I think it was on TBN I saw Against All Odds, where Nixon's mother, they were Quakers, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
Nixon's
I
mother...
think she was a Quaker.
Yeah,
exactly.
and she told him that he would do something famous one day that would affect a lot of people, and he thought, when he became president, he thought that was it. But one night, the phone rang in the middle of the night, and it was Golda Meir, and she said, Mr. President, if you don't help us, we will no longer be a nation. And that was, the 73, the war back then. Around that time when you were during the campaign, I guess it was before he was out of office, and so she sent him a list, and he sent her every single thing she wanted. And Israel won the war. Yeah. Wow. So he did a tremendous job for Israel, and he did what he did. But as far as Israel was concerned, he really did something famous, like his mom said. That was really prophetic. But I didn't know what you knew about that since you were in the campaign, and I wanted you to go over that. But go ahead, keep going. I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no, please do, Marlene, because, see, this is wonderful. I didn't know that fact about him. I knew that he helped Israel a lot.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Israel, if people realize it's such a tiny little sliver of land, you know? You drive from Tel Aviv, from the ocean to Jerusalem, I think the road now is much better, in an hour. That's the width of the country at that level.
Yeah.
In the Negev, in the south, you probably take a little more time. But tiny little thing, attacked by everybody from everywhere.
And they were surrounded at the time. When she called him, they were surrounded. And she said, we don't have anything. We have just a couple of tanks and this and that. And he sent her everything on the list that she wanted.
Wow. Oh, you're going to make me cry.
All right. Well,
No, in a good way, because one of the group of verses I was going to give, and listen to this, Isaiah 41, comfort ye, my people, saith your God. Speak it comfortably to Jerusalem and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. So anybody blesses Jerusalem gets blessed.
That's right.
Blessing Israel, people get blessed.
That's right.
Not because we want to, but because God directs it.
Right.
You know?
And let me ask, has anybody here ever read the book Michael she talked about?
No.
I still have a copy. I prayed that it would touch people after I read it, but you were already saved by that time. But you had already been blessed by it. But that book was one of my favorite books. But anyway,
No kidding.
No.
Isn't that wonderful to hear? Oh, gosh.
You keep talking.
You know, thank God for all these Christian books. You know, I had like 5,000 books.
I know.
And my former husband, like he said, you know, either you give up this Christ fantasy or it's our marriage. And after the first time I tried to take my life, I knew I couldn't do that again. And he told me to file for divorce and prepare the agreement. You know, if I gave up Jesus, my body would just be literally evaporated. I wouldn't live. My only reason for living is to do what he wants me to do and to be here for him. Otherwise, I don't need to be here. You have no idea how many times I said, God, I want to go home.
Wow.
But I also tell him, you told me about the first half, which happened, which I'll share in a minute. Now, when is the second half happening?
Yeah.
You know,
All right.
when they come.
Well, you continue on. I'm going to let you continue. I'm not going to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yes. I couldn't go to church while I was at home. You know, I would watch Christian TV when my husband wouldn't be home, and that's all I could do. There was no need to offend him unnecessarily. But when I traveled, because we would stay over, like we covered Bakersfield, Lancaster in California, and then on the West Coast, Oxnard, Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Santa Maria. So many times I had to stay overnight, and they paid us for doing that, but then I could go to church. And I met this lady in a Wednesday night meeting, and there were two classes, one about money and one about prophecy. There was one person in the money class that said, that's not for me, and I went to the other class. And she was the head counselor in her First Baptist Church, and also a prophet herself. And she gave me a card, and she said, next time you're in Bakersfield, I would be there like once every 2-3 months. You know, call me. I came back again, did not call her at the time. After that, I called her. And she said, well, I'm very busy, but let me see, Tuesday I'm with my husband, but I'll see you. So I went to see her. We were 2 judges and 2 court reporters. And we were eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, and they were going to the movie, and I said, no, I have to go see Elsie. Elsie was her name. And she said to me, why are you here? And I said, well, I need to get over anger issues. And we're talking, and then she mentioned how so-and-so came to her to be anointed as a prophet, and my heart jumped. I said, I think that's what I want. She prayed for a minute. She said, yes, I'm to anoint you as a prophet. She left the room, came back. She said, this is oil from Jerusalem. And she anointed me, and she said, my daughter, I anoint you as a prophet to my people, Israel. Through you will come to me not 10, not 20, not 30, but 400-fold. And I started wailing uncontrollably. I couldn't stop. I was so embarrassed. Her husband is in the other room. I had just met them. Then she put her hand on my head, and she said, Jesus, anoint her with your laughter. And I go, ha, 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 ha. I couldn't stop. And then she put her hand on my head again, and she said, Jesus, anoint her with your love. And everybody I saw, I said, I love you, I love you, I love you, my dear sisters in Christ over there as well. And then we became friends as I would come there. She said she had never seen anybody wail like that. It was like Rachel weeping for her children, Israel. And I know that the very people who persecute me are the ones that I am to minister to as God would allow, as time would allow. But what happened, like I said, my husband amazingly let me go minister. And I need to share this following experience with you, because I am a seer. I see into the body. I see the future. I see the past. I'm a healer. And, I mean, I've had amazing miracles in ministry over the years. And, you know, sometimes people say, yes, how did you know? Sometimes they say, oh, no way. And then they find me and call me. I'll tell you one little story. By the way, every time I went to minister, it would be, God, what do you want me to talk about? Because I have nothing to say. And it was wonderful when there'd be a conference or an advance or a retreat, when the other speakers would dovetail the same subject matter. Or when the people come up and say, oh, wonderful, that's what I needed to hear. And I was ministering in this Christian ladies group. It was in the evening, and I have to tell you, I usually have to go to the bathroom and my feet hurt in high heels. When I minister, I don't feel the heels. I don't have to go to the bathroom. It doesn't matter if I don't eat for days. So it's a good way to lose weight, right? But anyway, this little girl comes up in line, and out of my mouth comes, "You're going to have a new husband." And she looks at me and she says, "Oh no," she says, "I'm already married." And I looked up without speaking loudly. I said to God internally, I said, "God, you can't do this to me. I can't tell them the wrong things." And I saw her husband wearing a flannel work shirt, the one that has like different colors. Like this one I saw red and a blue and a white repeating pattern, and the sleeves were folded. And I spoke it out, and she said, "Oh no," she said, "my husband is an engineer and he wears white shirts and ties to work." And I looked up again, and the Lord said to me, "Don't look at their faces." In other words, don't take the words back. And I'm ministering. This was like 8:30 in the evening, and from the corner of my eye, I see she was sitting in the back of the room. And she comes back up in line at about 12:30, and she says, "When we were first married, my husband wore the shirt you described, but it was green and brown." I said, "Okay." A month later, she found me. I was in Oxnard. Our main office was in the San Fernando Valley, so she called the office, found me in Oxnard. And she says, "I have to tell you something." She said, "A week after the meeting, my husband bought the exact shirt you described. He stopped going to the bars," which was the problem. He had been a good Christian. He had started going to bars. "And all my friends tell me I have a new husband." Isn't that something? In other words, I thought different husband, right? Wouldn't you think the same? So that taught me, no matter what comes out of my mouth, no matter what I see, just to speak it out, because it's not of me anyway. So anyway, in 1989, I was ministering, working full-time, active in politics, active in the Lawyers Club, raising 4 children. And I was ministering twice a month. And always, "God, what do you want me to talk about?" In the beginning of the year, it was very militant, Deuteronomy 4:1, "Go ye and possess the land." And I'm looking at the people, I'm saying, "God, look at them, they're hurting." 2 Corinthians 5:13 says, "When you're in your right mind, you're for other people. When you're beside yourself, you're for God." When we feel good, we can conquer the whole world. When we don't feel well, we can't even think beyond ourselves. So the rest of the year, it was from March till the end of November. Love is the healer, and people come up in line. And, you cannot do a lot when it's a lot of people to minister to. But he'd start showing me the hurts. He really shows me from the beginning what he showed me a long time ago. We're all damaged property. Either hurts that we've suffered or genetically, things that come forward. And he allows me to see these hurts and literally to heal people from them. And in December, it was, "Be bold in the Lord, the truth shall make you free." Very militant again. So I'm driving home on Christmas Day, 1989, from Palm Springs to Northridge, where I lived till after the earthquake in 1994. And my youngest son was with me, and he says, "Mom, change the station." I said, "Danny, don't talk." I knew I would hear from God. So internally, I'm saying, "Okay, God, this is what we talked about last year. What are we going to talk about next year?" And all I can tell you is a beam of light came upon me from the heavenlies, like a Paul's beam of light experience on the road to Damascus. It was bluish white in color. It was so powerful I could hardly contain it. I had to go, "You don't see me," but I had to breathe deeply to hold the power. And the Lord spoke to me, and he said, when I said, "Go ye and possess the land," I meant go ye even possess the land and teach my people how to do so. That Satan took land only because of our inaction. We're to put our hands on our hips and say, "Satan, you made another mistake. We're going to take and overtake and take more land," like David did in Ziklag, King David. And I don't talk like that. But we were not to be namby-pamby Christians anymore. That we were to wrest the land out of the hands of the enemy. The image was an umbrella open upside down. That we take the stick and twist it and yank it out with the spokes. And that Satan was unleashing his highest principalities and powers upon the earth the following January. And I said, "Are you Michael?" Archangel Michael is the archangel of the Jews. The power stayed on me for 8 days. I talk fast, but I was going like 100 miles an hour. And whatever I prayed for people manifested right there and then. Money, jobs, health, whatever. When it lifted, it took me about 2 or 3 weeks to regain my strength. And there used to be this wonderful Spirit-Filled Christian Businessmen Group, Full Gospel Businessmen Fellowship, and they had their international meeting in Anaheim, California, the following July. And then Mr. Black, a vice president, comes to our table and he says, God has been teaching us spiritual warfare, and he says we're not to be namby-pamby Christians anymore. I said, thank you, Jesus. So anyway, to tell you all of that, so I'm a spiritual warrior. I don't like to be, but what I want to do, and I want to talk about my radio show a little bit and to encourage you ladies, what you should do as well to promote your books. I have suffered terribly. My brother and sister, under the tutelage of these corrupt, high-level Jewish people in Beverly Hills, who told Paul Crouch not to have me on TBN, helped them kill my parents. Sternlight, they live 6 blocks west of the Menendez brothers. If you remember, they were shot by their children. My brother and sister used doctors and medication. Doctors who helped kill Doris Duke, the tobacco heiress, and others. It's an organized thing. My life had been threatened. Everything of mine has been stolen. I've been injected with chemicals. They kept burglarizing my doubly secure condo then in Las Vegas, throwing human feces on my balcony, on my car repeatedly. And, having taught law, having practiced law, and having been a judge, you think I know a little bit about law. Got no help from authorities. Ended up, my brother and sister got to keep the money offshore. My sister filed fraudulent bankruptcy. She was only convicted of felony financial elder abuse. And by the way, this is going on a huge scale in the United States. People being killed and the money stolen. Really on the way to socialism and communism in America. So I live in my body as a prophet what the rest of the body will go through. The reason I started my radio show last year is when I moved to the state of Washington, where I am now in the Seattle area, about 2.5 years ago now, I filed litigation in federal district court here because in Las Vegas there would be no point in doing it. And suing California, Nevada, all the people who hurt me, and the judge with very ungrounded reasoning dismissed my case. I became so sick, I had infection in my whole body, I had to have surgery. But anyway, I wanted the radio program to be able to have a platform, not just for what happened to me and to warn people, but to have pure-hearted Christians like you, Marlene, and the beautiful Tina and beautiful Rebecca, and I'm sure the other ladies in the group have a place to say what they want to say. Because in the past year or so, God has been dealing with me about the need to return to holiness. I see such apostasy in the body. I mean, if any of you listen to Jack Van Impe, God bless him, he keeps talking about people, ministers joining Christianity and Islam together, calling it Chrislam, taking the fact that Jesus is the Son of God out of Bibles they gave out in Pakistan. I've never heard of such things. So he showed me there would be stadiums filled to capacity with people sitting for hours, no talking, no music. The Shekinah glory will be dwelling over those stadiums. Everybody will be healed. People will be empowered for whatever their mission is on earth. They will not want to leave, but when they do leave, they'll be so empowered. So somehow, maybe the radio program will help. Marlene had asked me to talk about why I chose this station. If you research it, many programs are available for you to have an internet radio show, but then you have to do everything, do the engineering and the focusing. I knew that I couldn't do it. I'm technologically challenged. So anyway, I was led to go to bbsradio.com. They do everything. I just get on the phone with them, and they take care of all the sound and whatever needs to be done, and they help record the programs. By the way, my shows are now available for free on my website. They're all archived, and that's the new one is judgeeve.com, www. And the reason, if anybody else joins it, if you mention it's for me, then I get a percentage of it. If you join as a host and you get other hosts in, you can also be helped, get some money from that. And I can advertise. They help make commercials. I haven't gotten any requests for advertising yet, but they just do it over the phone. I think if I recall correctly, they can also do video type shows. I need to find out more about that. So I do it only every other week because it's all I can afford to pay. Excuse me. And what I'd like to encourage you, and then I'd like to open it to questions. The way I always got, like when Pat Robertson ran for president and I helped him, he needed 3 million people to support him, to support his run. And I was working and doing everything else, but part-time. I was told later I was personally responsible for 200,000 of those names. And I knew if I did it full-time, I probably could get him all of the names. And he said to me, if he had 3,000 like me, he would win the election. I said, I know. So what I'd like to encourage you to do, not to just go with the routine ways of publicizing things. Even the way I got my first two legal jobs. I took the yellow pages and I just called every lawyer in my vicinity to see if they need research. That was before I passed the bar. Ended up working for 2 of them and then ended up working for 1 of them as a lawyer, and he was wonderful in the way he trained me. So when you have your book, whatever your subject matter is, don't just talk about it and advertise it, and I guess now they have YouTube and Facebook and all these things. Do the unusual. Go to your subject matter. Contact either publishers like that if you need the book published, or contact people in your field and tell them about your book. Tell them you're available for speaking. Because if you do the unusual, you'll get great results.